It's been 10 years since Meet Your Match dropped, and 10 years since Meet vs Match, the battle between Heavy and Pyro to see who would get the next update. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, and only one of them will get a future class update, and of course, the Pyro won, and 1 year later we got Jungle Inferno, which was cool and all, but what about Heavy? Quote, okay, both of them might get new class updates at some point. In fact, it's highly likely they both will. Brilliant! Heavy hasn't been forgotten, but now it's 10 years later and Jungle Inferno was in 2017, which begs the question, where is the Heavy update? But wait, from the official Meet Your Match update page, 1 lucky class is going to get a full-fledged class pack in a future update. It could be Heavy, it could be Pyro, but it's not gonna be both. This conflicting information messes up everything. Could it be there never actually was a Heavy update planned? What have I been doing these past 10 years waiting for an update that was never gonna come? Well, whether or not a Heavy update was planned, it's pretty clear at this point it's not gonna happen. The last major update to TF2 was 9 years ago, and the game has pretty much been abandoned since then. But I want the Heavy update. So I guess I'm just gonna have to make it myself. So, how do I make an update? This isn't exactly a new concept in the community. Many people before me have made mock-ups for their own updates that they would like added into the game, with some famous examples being Tropic Crisis, Frontline, and Invasion, which actually did make it into the game, don't I know it. After all, this meme will never die. But anyway, I need a theme for my update. One problem I have with the updates I just mentioned is, how did they get there? Why are they in World War II? Why is Spy a South American drug lord? Why are there aliens? Okay, we'll just brush over that and won't mention it again. I want something a bit more down to earth for my update. Something that's more believable that the Mercs would actually be doing. And of course, it's got to relate to Heavy in some way. Well, it's a running joke that the Heavy is, I won't sugarcoat it, fat. People call him the Fat Man, overweight, a fat, bored, fatty, fat. People are quite mean to poor Heavy. He is, need I remind you, Heavy Weapons Guy, not Heavy Weapons Guy. The Heavy is a sensitive soul and all these fat jokes are getting him down. But that said, there is no shame in wanting to improve oneself, and to be frank, the Heavy is sick of always coming second. He was beaten to the administrator by the Pyro, and to add insult to injury, he then lost the resulting competition. Always coming last to the vote, last to the point. He's had enough. The Heavy says, no more. Something has to change. It's time for the Heavy to get fit. So, a fitness update, very nice, but what does that actually mean? I need some substance for my update after all. Back when Meet Your Match was announced, the expectations of these updates were that they would overhaul their respective classes in some way. It was, after all, a time when competitive matchmaking was the main point of interest for a lot of people, and the Pyro did actually end up getting a few of his abilities reworked when he inevitably won. Therefore, something of a similar nature would be expected for an equivalent Heavy update. Now, I will preface this by saying that I have the luxury of designing an update that isn't actually going to be in the game, and thus I am not burdened with the responsibility of any changes that I make. There will be people who don't like my ideas and think they will break the game, so I must begin with the disclaimer that this is just an exercise in fun and creativity. The goal is just to create a potential Heavy update in the absence of a real one. I do not necessarily think these ideas should be in the actual game. But with that said, make the Heavy faster. He's just too slow and he wants to be faster. And maybe then he won't be beaten all the time. It's natural that having a big heavy gun would slow you down somewhat, so I'm going to say increase the heavy's speed and give him a movement penalty when his minigun is deployed. This is definitely not a unique idea on my part. It's been suggested by others before, with the main counter-argument being it would be overpowered in competitive. The thing you have to understand about competitive 6's players is, and this is coming from someone who likes and has played a lot of 6v6, they're not playing TF2 anymore. I could rant about competitive players for a while, but the important thing is they don't represent the entire player base of the game. If they don't like fast heavy, they can just ban him entirely, that's not my problem. Anyway, back to the update. Heavy has a problem I do care about. And that is that the sandwich is really good. It's so good, in fact, that there's not really much reason to use anything else. I mean, when was the last time you saw someone using the shotgun as a heavy? When was the last time you saw someone using the family business? I don't want to nerf the sandwich though. A balanced diet is part of a healthy lifestyle after all, but it's clear nothing will ever compete. Healing yourself and others is too fundamentally good to give up, so let's not compete. Both Engineer and Spy have 4 weapon slots, so let's just give Heavy a dedicated lunchbox slot. Now you can use a shotgun and a food item. So now we have the groundwork for our update. We need to make an update page. I don't know how to do that, but we can look at existing community update pages to see how they did it. Seems like the page is just separated into blocks, with each block having its own background image that makes up part of a bigger picture. Seems simple enough. Problem is, I'm not much of a graphic designer, so I guess I'll try and keep it simple. I want to tell the story of how, spurred on by his defeats, the Heavy is inspired to get into shape. I'll need some pictures. Source Filmmaker will come in useful for that. Source Filmmaker is its own beast, but I managed to cobble together something. Let's not dwell on the eldritch horrors of Source Filmmaker though, because it's very easy to get carried away. Lighting, for example, is fun. Is this realistic? No, but I think I like it. Now I've got something resembling a website, and I've got some reworks for the Heavy, but there's one thing missing. He doesn't have any new weapons, and what update is complete without new weapons? There are plenty of weapon models online, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not I'm allowed to use them without permission. And I don't really want to talk to anyone to find out because of my crippling social anxiety. That just leaves making my own. Now I'm no 3D modeler, and I'm definitely no texture artist, but with the newly freed up secondary slot, it just feels wrong to not have a new weapon. So I guess I'll give it a go. I began by making a little mock-up sketch based on a shotgun called the TOS 106, a shotgun famously featured in a game called Tarkov that I have not played. However, I then remembered that in TF2 you're kind of limited by the existing animations. In other words, the hands need to be in a certain place, and in the case of a shotgun, it needs to be pump action as opposed to the bolt action of my reference gun. After modifying my design somewhat, I took it over to Blender to begin modelling, and I ended up with something that almost resembles a gun. Now the big challenge was to texture it, and this part was not easy. Team Fortress 2 has a very distinctive art style, identifiable by its big sweeping brush strokes. I attempted to mimic this style as best I could, but I'm not entirely sure it's quite there. Still, it's a learning opportunity, a challenge to get me out of my comfort zone, so here we have Heavy's new weapon, the Torsky 12 gauge. What does it do? There's only one thing it can do. On hit, bleed. And so we have everything we need for our update. Or do we? Because we're still missing one thing. We need a name. But there is only one possible name for an update of this caliber. Introducing Worth the Wait. And so here it is, my heavy update. If you would like to view it, there is a link in the description. This has been an interesting exercise in creativity, pushing the boundaries of what I'm able to do. Am I entirely happy with it? Well, no, the quality isn't exactly on the level I'd hoped. But that just puts into perspective how much effort and skill goes into these types of projects. In the past, I've been critical of community updates like mine Project, Tropic Crisis and Frontline, saying that they don't fit into the game, but these days I just think it's really good that people come together and make things like this. The whole making something is the important part. Let Valve make decisions on what should and should not be in the actual game. I may be disappointed with the quality of my update, but I'm just happy I made something, because it's so easy to get so bogged down in things not looking exactly the way you want that you never actually make anything. And of course, many of you will have differing opinions on what the heavy update should be, so I invite you to leave a comment about what you would change about the game. In fact, I encourage you to design a full update of your own, because why not? I had a good time doing it, maybe you will too. And maybe we'll eventually give Valve enough ideas that they'll get around to making a proper heavy update. But I will leave you with that thought. Thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye.
This meme will never die, because we are in the bin. We are in the bin. We are in the bin.